Fridays, we visit with a friend from the Des Moines Register. Of course, it's Rekha Basu. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. A little chilly, though.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It feels like the Arctic out there.
That's okay. Tomorrow it's going to be in the 40s, and we're all wearing shorts.
Really?
It's
I'd like
short
to
stay.
see that.
Just like in New York and 60 other cities around the world.
It's
they
short stay?
They had no pants, subway rides.
Subway day.
Last Sunday, all over the globe.
What? In winter?
Seriously, yeah, we'll fill you in.
We'll fill you in later.
We'll fill you in, but tomorrow
But make sure you tune in tomorrow. If it reaches 40 degrees, we're wearing shorts.
I will be looking forward to that.
But we're talking about something else that is going to be topic of discussion.
We are talking about water today, which is a subject I don't think we talk about very much on my segment, but this is really important. We're talking about what's been going on in Flint, Michigan, where the water has been so badly contaminated that one family, as we were just saying before, one family's child, they have these 4-year-old twin sons. They live in Flint, and they had been noticing things happening in their water system for a while, dirty water and smells and rashes and burns after taking showers. The kids then tested positive for lead. The safe level is 15 parts per billion, according to federal environmental standards. These kids had 13,000 parts per billion lead in their bodies.
That's unbelievable.
It's
mind-boggling.
unbelievable. And this all began because the city was in financial trouble, ran out of money, and decided to separate from the Detroit water system, which is what they had connected to. And the Detroit water supply system was safe because they were using certain treatment chemicals to clean the pipes.
Kind of like what we do with Des Moines Water Works.
Exactly, to coat the pipes. So you put these treatments in the water, and then it coats the pipes so that if there's rust there, if there's lead, it doesn't come out and endanger the public health. Well, they switched to the Flint River for their water, and they stopped treating it. They didn't treat it at all, the city of Flint. And so, can you imagine?
No.
And so these people are getting, first these kids are, they're noticing a foul smell, and then when they go swimming in their private pool or they take showers, they come back with rashes, and then and then there were several different problems. They had to over-chlorinate to compensate for something else, so people's hair started falling out, people's eyelashes started falling out, and this is, irreparable. I mean, it's not reversible. But then the lead poisoning, this is the freakiest part, because that can cause permanent brain impairment, and it can also lead to behavioral problems, hyperactivity disorder, and developmental disorders that cannot be compensated for later. And her little kid, this kind of the person who sounded the alarm, and everybody should listen to this Michigan Public Radio documentary. It's called Not Safe to Drink, and you can find it on National Public Radio. And it sort of narrates through the eyes of this particular family how the water started to change and affect their lives. And they kept going to doctors and public officials and saying something's wrong here, and they were told, no, it's fine, it's safe to drink, it's safe to drink, it's safe to drink. So for 18 months, the population of Flint was being exposed to this stuff, and there were cover-ups and denials, and testing was done, but it was thrown out by local officials.
Wow.
Yeah, eventually 3 months after the city and state even acknowledged that there was a problem, and by the way, the city and state were both at fault about this. The state was supposed to be monitoring and approving and signing off on the transition to a different water supply system, but they weren't doing very much of anything except for occasionally one public official. Finally the governor had to declare a state of emergency in Flint and in the county because of this. So now they have not National Guard, but state troopers who are going door to door to people's houses to give out bottled water, but they should have been sounding the alarm many, many months, if not, a year.
They should have seen the increase and done something when they first saw the increase, because this didn't happen overnight.
Exactly, it did not happen overnight. And when this family finally went to someone with the federal EPA, he came back and did testing. He was so alarmed that he was telling the city, do something and warn people, let them know how elevated this is and that the water is not safe. And actually, some of his findings were just tossed out by local officials. They didn't even want to deal with it. And it's all about money. And now, they finally acknowledged that, yes. And they were building, I guess, a separate water supply system, but that wouldn't be ready until late this year. So in the meantime, people were subjected to all of this. So I think now they've agreed to switch back to Detroit's water supply or something like that. But it would have cost them what did I hear, $100 a day or something to coat the pipes, but they didn't take that option. And so what I'm trying to make the comparison to is actually what happens in cities like ours, because we don't, the Des Moines Water Works is on top of things as far as coating the pipes so that we don't have this lead exposure problem. But what they are facing, and what the lawsuit that they filed a year ago is alleging, is that agricultural runoff from farmland in 3 northern Iowa communities is polluting the water supplies here, and that their costs are going up and up and up every year, the waterworks cost for cleaning up the water because of that. And it periodically leads to crisis situations because of this combination of nitrates and organic matter, and then the chemicals like chlorine that they put into it. And so I interviewed a member of the board, actually the vice chair of the board of the Waterworks Department, and Leslie Gerhardt, and she's a personal friend of mine also. So I hear a lot about this, and I have learned something about science through what she's been telling me. And she said there are no state regulations on farms as to how much or what they have to do with their waste. So it's not regulated at all, and yet there are tight regulations. And she says, as there should be on Des Moines Waterworks and what it releases to the public. And she said, of course there should be, because this is about the public health. But at the other end, there should also be some state requirements as to what's safe, and there should be some kind of testing and follow-up to determine whether what's running off into the public waterways is safe.
This is, and I told you this before the segment, I'd read a couple of articles within the last year or two, and this was about lead in the gasoline and how when we had that, and I think we stopped doing that in the late 70s, I don't remember, that we stopped putting lead in gasoline.
78 or 9.
Yeah, and how that got into the soil, and a lot of people think actually, as you said, it affects people's brains, it affects their behavior, it affects their ability to learn. So, Tom, I'm just gonna, sorry to bug you, but
do you have a chart?
just a few articles here. This is from Forbes. Now, this is a little bit older. This is from 2013. How lead caused America's violent crime epidemic, and you can look at trends in the 70s. Violent crime goes up. When we stop putting lead in the gasoline, violent crime goes down. Another article from the Chicago Sun-Times, and this one actually I think came out today. Studies link childhood lead exposure and violent crime. And then finally, I wanted to show you this. And again, this is related to what Rekha is talking about. This is a map of the city of New Orleans. At the top, lead contamination in the soil, where the darker colors indicate more lead in the soil. At the bottom, if you look at those same areas in medium income, these are the poor sectors of the city. So you have, the lead getting into the water, affecting learning and behavior and all this thing. So this is a serious.
And this is so much an income issue too, because would they do this in a rich community? What they did in Flint? Of course not. These are poor people, and they're people who are disbelieved, who don't necessarily have access to people in power who can go and say to them, this is a crisis, and get some results. And this woman said, this mother of these children who were testing higher, went to talk to a public official and said, my kids' lead levels are so high, they're going to have permanent impairment. And the woman said back to her, well, they'll maybe, just lose a couple of IQ points. Just a couple of IQ points.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Well, it's not her kid, right? She doesn't care.
Exactly.
No
what does
deal.
she care? It's just a couple of points. But it's so outrageous, and it's so infuriating. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I had not heard about that.
Yeah.
This also shines a spotlight on people taking water for granted.
Yes.
We can go to the faucet and turn water on and have it perfectly safe to drink, and you can't do that everywhere.
It takes a lot to get it to that point, is the thing. More and more, because there's so many environmental pollutants and contaminants coming from so many different places, and also because the infrastructure is really aging in the United States in general. So replacing those pipes would cost just, $1 trillion, but that can't be done. So in the meantime, you really have to treat them very carefully to prevent against this kind of outcome. But yes, you're so right. People take water for granted, and we don't think about the health consequences posed by unsafe drinking water.
And that's all in today's Des Moines Register.
Exactly.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Rekha.
Thank you. Thanks for the chart.